Hi, I'm Jen, and I like the Munsters better than the Addams Family. Sorry. Quick reminder here at the top that this is an inclusive space where Black Lives Matter and we are anti-Asian hate. That means that you are safe here in the video with me and in the comments below where no hate speech of any kind will be tolerated. Today we're going to talk about creating a writer's bucket list. Nanowrimo is right around the corner, as I will not let you forget for the next 2 months. And that means that you may be already thinking about what project you want to tackle this November. If that's the case, maybe you want to make sure that that project leads to your bigger picture writing goals. And one of the ways to know what those bigger picture writing goals are is to create a writer's bucket list. When you start your writer's bucket list, go ahead and dream big, like huge, even if it's completely impossible. If you were creating kind of a generic bucket list, you probably wouldn't stick to things like walk to the end of the block today. It would be more like travel to every country in the world or make it to Antarctica more than once. So your writer's bucket list shouldn't be any different. You can include things like make $1 million off of my writing or go to writer's residencies in multiple countries. Creating a bucket list without any guidelines or limitations might be a little overwhelming. So if it helps, you can start off by setting yourself a number limit or sticking to one type of writing goal. Personally, I kind of looked up a few different bucket lists for writers and pulled the things that I thought were super interesting or that I really wanted to achieve off of them. Anything that I've already achieved or that didn't really interest me, I didn't bother adding to my own personal list. I didn't worry about numbers and I didn't worry about timelines because that's not what I would do with a normal bucket list either. Instead, I broke down my list into a few different categories. Breaking it down is actually going to help me decide what I want to do this year for NaNoWriMo. My categories are career, general travel or residencies, pilgrimages, reading and writing challenges, and general writer's lifestyle. I'm going to go over a couple of the items in these lists, but I'm also going to make a template available on my Patreon so that you can download that, print it out, and create a bucket list of your own. For me, writing is a career, not a hobby, but I still have to constantly remind myself of that fact. And that's why I made that the first category on my bucket list. My big picture goals include getting traditionally published and writing tie-in novels for existing IPs. So some of my bucket list items include finding an agent and getting contracted to write a tie-in novel or selling the film rights to one of my books or more of my books. These items might be on your list as well, or you might be looking to self-publish and then your list is going to look a little different. Make sure that your bucket list goals, regardless of the category, fit your long-term and short-term ideas. Otherwise, your bucket list isn't going to be very productive and it might actually be counterproductive because it has a bunch of things on it that you're not working towards. My career list also includes philanthropy because success to me means that I get to give back to the programs and systems that helped shape me as a person and a writer. I want to be able to support and give back to the libraries and the public schools that I grew up in, and so those items are also on my bucket list. The second category on my bucket list is general travel and residencies or writing retreats. Before COVID happened, I really enjoyed traveling around to different places for extended periods of time for writing residencies and writing retreats. I've been to Iceland, Alaska, Vermont. I've been able to write in England and work in a whole bunch of different places, which was really fun and fruitful for me. Obviously, right now with the pandemic going on, there are a lot of restrictions on me and my family on where we can go safely. Some of the items on my travel and residency list are to fly internationally to research for one of my projects and to spend a week or more on a train traveling across the country. While these things may be doable with some quarantine time and as things start to become safer, they are still a ways off. And for you, they may not be a priority, they may not be interesting to you, you may be perfectly happy where you are and not want or need to travel for your writing, and that's totally fine. I still recommend including some writers' retreats, even if they're local or something that you design for yourself at home. The third category on my list is another travel category, but it's a little different because this list is pilgrimages. In my travels, I have been able to go to some really amazing locations. And when I went to Chicago, the people that I went to visit were kind enough to entertain me with a Ferris Bueller's Day Off tour. tour, which is super fun, and I highly recommend doing that when it is safe again. But I want to go to places where my favorite writers were inspired or worked on some of my favorite pieces of fiction, but also places where the books are set. If you are interested in finding some really cool literary locations, either fictional or historical, you can actually search on Atlas Obscura, and you can find some really unique places, tours, bookstores, all sorts of things. And you can add that to your bucket list. Some of these literary places have become so well known in the canon that they've either been memorialized with statues or full museums, and some of them have tours that you can actually pay an expert to guide you through the area. So places like different locations in New Zealand where Lord of the Rings was filmed. And then, of course, there are super classic places like the Peter Pan statue in Kensington Gardens, or you can visit places like Edgar Allan Poe's grave here in Maryland. The category that I think is most helpful to me for setting my NaNoWriMo goals was the reading and writing challenges list. Now, if you've never taken part in NaNoWriMo, that might be on your bucket list to begin with, just taking part in the event. For me, I'm trying to challenge myself a little bit more, so I change the rules for my own writing goals every year. And you might also want to do that. You might want to challenge yourself to write in a new genre that you've never attempted before, or set some new restrictions on yourself. I've included reading and writing challenges. Obviously, the reading challenges are not going to be as helpful for NaNoWriMo, but I do want to try to do things like reading 100 books in a year, which I've absolutely never even gotten close to. But if I set that goal for myself, and now that it's on my bucket list, I may get a little bit closer in the future. I also really enjoy researching and annotating. So for me, one of the items on my list is annotating 5 books. Again, maybe not a great goal for NaNoWriMo, but something that I may want to do and set as a challenge for myself in the future. There are also writing challenges that are even more compact than NaNoWriMo, like the 3-day novel challenge or 24-hour novel challenge. You can just Google those things and find out the organizations that run those events at different times during the year. The final category on my bucket list is probably the most loosely defined. It's the writer lifestyle. For me, that means eventually owning a house with an actual library in it, and creating a writer's shed that has some climate control. It was really hot this summer, so I haven't spent a lot of time out there, which really bums me out. I also included things like receiving fan letters or fan art, being able to commission fan art of a piece of work that I wrote, or framing a cover of a book that's been published. Those things could arguably go in the career slot, but I think they would probably be more of like a lifestyle thing for me, so that's where they went on my bucket list. So what does all this have to do with NaNoWriMo, and what did I ultimately choose to work on this November? Thank you so much for asking. That's very kind of you. The last couple of years have definitely been very taxing, so I decided that this year I'm going to do something super fun and go all the way back to the beginning of my novel writing roots. When I was in middle school, my best friend Amber and I had this binder with notebook paper inside, and it was our Rose Planet series. It's an idea that actually kind of gnawed at me for quite a while by writing 50,000 words of this novel. It's the first year that I actually won NaNoWriMo. I was much older than middle school, but I went back to the original handwritten book that we had, and I might have it somewhere in my closet. I'm definitely gonna look for it before embarking upon this project. But the point is, I'm returning to that project. The Rose Planet series is a super fun story that I was writing before I was worried about cliches and whether or not something is smart enough or whether or not it's been done before. And the fact that that story is still in my brain and still feels like something I want to return to makes me excited to revisit it. I think sometimes as we grow as writers, we start to worry too much about making sure that our work is literary enough or is going to do everything all of the time, as opposed to just focusing on what our actual goals are for our writing life. Returning to those novel writing roots and the real fun of creating something like that for the first time ever, I think will help me move forward towards my long-term writing goals, as well as reminding me why I set those goals in the first place. That's another reason that creating a bucket list was really fun and I think is really important every now and again. This week on Advice Jen Can Dish Out, But She Can't Take. Remember that your bucket list is a living document. Just because you've written something on that list doesn't mean you now have to achieve it. It doesn't mean that you're ever going to achieve it. You can take it off or add something new at any time. I've written my bucket list in pencil for that specific reason, so that I can change it as I go and so that I can move it around as my priorities and my long-term goals change. Have you ever created a writer's bucket list, or are you considering writing one now? What kind of categories will you use and what will you put on your list? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget that our Patreon is up and running, and I am currently building a resource library where there are exclusive videos only available to patrons, as well as templates and spreadsheets that you can use to organize and create your writing life. Head on over to the Patreon to find a free template for you to create your own writer's bucket list, and make sure that that bucket list helps guide you towards this year's Nanowrimo project. Let me know if there's something you'd like to see here on the channel down below in the comments, or you can send me an email. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. I did that backwards. And you can click the bell to make sure that you're notified every time there's new content on the channel. Don't forget that Preptober and Nanowrimo are coming up, which means weekly vlogs and updates on both my writing progress and how you can make more progress yourself. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and stay safe and stay healthy. See you next time.
Are you always this articulate?
Hercules. My name